of Northern Ireland's largest hospitals are burning. More than 90,000 rioters are on the streets. 6,000 patients have been forced to evacuate. One have been injured, including doctors and police officers. Damage has already reached $112 million. This is not a drill. This is the worst civil unrest Britain has seen in over a decade, and it began in the very places where lives are meant to be saved. By 6:18 p.m, hospitals are no longer places of care. They are evacuation zones. Sirens cut through smoke as doctors wheel patients into the rain. Elderly men clutch blankets, women wait on stretchers beside burning wards. Oxygen tanks are carried by hand as power fails room by room. Emergency entrances are smashed. Ambulances are rerouted again and again, with nowhere left to go. Doctors are injured while treating the wounded. Police form lines inside corridors meant for healing. For thousands of families watching from home, a terrifying truth settles in. Tonight, the system designed to save lives cannot even protect itself. Let's be honest, corporate media won't tell you how bad this really is because they're terrified of admitting law and order has completely broken down. That's why we built UK Instability to deliver unfiltered truth. Subscribe to hear the whole truth. By 6:42 p.m, the question on the streets is no longer about fire. It is about fairness. Protesters point to a healthcare system stretched past breaking point. Inside these hospitals, 7 out of 10 beds are occupied by undocumented migrants under emergency government policy. Meanwhile, local British patients wait for hours, sometimes days, in corridors, or are turned away entirely due to overload. Families speak of parents sent home despite chest pain, of cancer appointments delayed again and again. For many watching, this is not ideology, it is lived experience. They are told there is no capacity, no funding, no staff. Yet capacity was found here. Funding was found here. The anger builds quietly but relentlessly. What began as frustration over waiting times hardens into a deeper belief that the system now decides who is treated first and who must wait. And that decision no longer favours the people who paid into it all their lives. At 7:05 p.m, the night breaks open. What had been contained, anger turns explosive with a single, brutal incident. Outside a city hospital, a 20-year-old Afghan man is accused of attacking 16 doctors with a crowbar. Screams echo across the entrance. Blood stains white coats. Windows shatter. Within minutes, footage spreads faster than any official statement. For many, this is the moment everything changes. Hospitals are no longer symbols of care. They are targets, and the people inside them are exposed. Crowds surge. Tempers snap. Police rush in, already outnumbered, trying to seal doors meant to stay open. Inside, staff barricade wards while still treating the injured. Outside, fury feeds on disbelief. Doctors attacked while saving lives. Patients trapped as fires spread nearby. The language on the streets hardens. This is no longer about waiting times or policy leaflets. It is about safety, dignity, and a line crossed in public view. When healers are assaulted and no authority steps forward to restore order, restraint collapses. The spark becomes flame. By the time sirens peak again, the city has slipped past the point of calm, and the night will not slow down. By 7:30 p.m, control is gone. What began in Northern Ireland surges outward, fast and unchecked. News alerts multiply. Fires are reported beyond Belfast. Violence edges toward mainland cities, with warnings issued as far as Birmingham. Police lines buckle under numbers they were never equipped to face. Bottles, bricks, and flares rain down. Officers fall. Medics rush to help them, then become targets themselves. Inside hospitals, panic replaces protocol. Doctors and nurses are evacuated under guard, some escorted through back corridors with nothing but ID badges and phones in their pockets. Temporary housing is arranged in haste. Others refuse to leave, staying with patients even as smoke creeps through stairwells. Outside, crowds shout that the system has chosen sides. Inside, the staff quietly decide they cannot do this anymore. Resignation letters are drafted on phones between emergency calls. Senior consultants, decades of experience, prepare to walk away. Ambulances idle with engines running, unsure where to deliver the wounded. Emergency rooms overflow, then shut their doors. The unthinkable happens. Entire districts are left without functioning medical care. Families plead with police for help that cannot come. On social media, one phrase repeats again and again: the system has collapsed. This is the moment the crisis stops being political and becomes existential. When doctors flee, when hospitals burn, when police are stretched to breaking, society feels its spine crack. The streets are loud, chaotic, furious. But beneath the noise is something colder: the realization that no one is fully in charge anymore, and the night is only halfway through. By 8:10 p.m, as flames continue to rise and emergency sirens blur into a single, endless sound, the country looks to one place for direction and finds only silence. In Westminster, the lights are on. Inside government buildings, staff move between rooms, phones pressed to ears, screens filled with live footage from burning hospitals. Yet outside, nothing changes. No visit, no decisive order, no acknowledgement of the scale unfolding in real time. When a statement finally appears, it is brief and carefully worded. Violence is condemned. Calm is urged. Public safety is described as a priority. But there is no reference to the evacuated patients, no mention of injured doctors, no explanation for why hospitals were left exposed. The words land flat, disconnected from the images filling television screens across the country. To many viewers, especially those who have relied on the health system all their lives, it sounds rehearsed, distant, and late. Opposition figures argue over language. Officials debate whether the unrest is contained. Behind closed doors, warnings circulate that police units are overstretched and medical staff are refusing further deployments without guarantees of protection. Those guarantees never arrive. Requests for reinforcement stall in procedural limbo. Responsibility is passed upward, then sideways, then nowhere at all. At 8:27 p.m, broadcasters cut between burning wards and the empty podium where leadership is expected to appear. Commentators struggle to maintain neutrality. Doctors watching from temporary shelters message colleagues asking the same question: who is in charge tonight? Families sitting beside radios and televisions ask another: if this happened to us, would anyone come? The absence becomes the message. As hours pass, it feels less like a delay and more like avoidance. When the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is finally confirmed to address the nation later, the damage is already done. For many, the moment has passed. Leadership, they believe, is not something you announce after the fire spreads. It is something you show before it does. Trust drains quietly but decisively, not through slogans or shouting, but through the cold recognition that the system responds faster to markets than to mayhem, faster to headlines than to human lives. As hospital by 8:45 p.m, the damage can no longer be measured in burned buildings or broken glass. It is measured in confidence, and that number is falling fast. New polling flashes across news tickers showing public trust down by 33% in a single shock. Police commanders report morale slipping hour by hour. Officers on the line speak of exhaustion, confusion, and a sense they have been left to absorb a crisis created elsewhere. Inside the medical profession, the rupture is even deeper. Senior doctors, names long respected, careers built over decades, begin submitting resignation notices. Not in protest, but in resignation to reality. They cite the same reasons again and again: unsafe workplaces, no guarantees of protection, no clear leadership. Some say they cannot ask junior staff to face another night like this. Others say they can no longer look patients in the eye and promise safety they cannot deliver. At the same time, movement begins. Quiet at first, then visible. Families pack, cars through the smoke, leaving Belfast behind. They head toward Cardiff, toward Birmingham, anywhere that feels more stable, even temporarily. Pharmacies report shortages as people stock up before leaving. Care homes call relatives asking them to collect residents early. This is not panic, it is calculation. When people stop arguing and start relocating, something fundamental has shifted. On the streets, the mood changes too. The shouting fades into a low, constant tension. Protesters speak less about anger and more about abandonment. Police lines hold, but the bond between authority and public has thinned. Every decision is questioned. Every delay interpreted as indifference. The belief takes root that the system no longer serves those who built it, funded it, and depended on it in old age. For viewers at home, many of them retirees who remember a different Britain, the feeling is deeply unsettling. They have lived through strikes, recessions, even terrorism. But this feels different. This feels like the slow withdrawal of something once reliable. Not a sudden collapse, but a steady retreat. By the end of the hour, the crisis has a new name among the public. It is no longer called unrest or disorder, it is called a breakdown of trust. And once that trust is gone, it does not return with statements or promises. It returns only when people believe the system will be there when they are weakest. Tonight, too many no longer believe that, and they are acting accordingly. By 9:30 p.m, the fires begin to lose their roar. Rain falls lightly over blackened streets, hissing as it hits hot metal and broken glass. The sirens fade, replaced by something quieter. Movement, not of crowds, but of people. Ordinary people doing what institutions could not. Outside a damaged hospital wing, volunteers form an impromptu line, passing bottles of water, blankets, and phone chargers. A retired nurse steadies an elderly man as he waits for transport that may never arrive tonight. Nearby, a young migrant helps lift debris so an ambulance can pass. No slogans, no cameras, just hands reaching out in the dark. Inside a community hall opened without permission or paperwork, teachers organize names on scraps of paper, trying to reunite patients with families. A doctor who resigned hours earlier stays on, refusing to leave until the last patient is moved. A police officer, helmet off, sits beside a frightened child and explains what the flashing lights mean. These moments do not trend online, but they matter more than anything that does. As midnight approaches, candles appear. In church halls, mosques, and living rooms, people pause, not to argue, but to reflect. Prayers are spoken in different accents, for different reasons, but with the same exhaustion. The anger that dominated the evening does not disappear, but it softens into something heavier. Grief for what has been lost, and fear for what may come next. A handwritten message taped to a boarded hospital entrance spreads quietly on social media. Care survives, even when systems fail. It is shared not because it excuses what happened, but because it reminds people who they still are. The crisis did not turn neighbours into enemies. It revealed how thin the line is between order and chaos, and how strong people can be when left to rely on each other. The final question of the night is not shouted. It is whispered in homes across the country. How does a nation rebuild trust after watching its hospitals burn and its leaders hesitate? The answer is not simple, and it will not come quickly. But one truth is clear. This was never just about violence or policy. It was about a system that forgot to listen, and a people who refused to disappear quietly. The fires will be extinguished, buildings will be rebuilt, but what remains, hanging in the smoke-filled air, is a reckoning. Not of rage, but of responsibility. The path forward will demand honesty, protection, and care restored. Not as slogans, but as actions. Because tonight proved one thing beyond doubt. When the system falters, it is people who hold the country together. And they will remember who stood with them when it mattered most. Tonight's story is not just about fire, numbers, or politics. It is about people. Frightened patients, exhausted doctors, worried families, and ordinary citizens forced to carry a burden that should never have been theirs alone. Systems can fail. Buildings can burn. Trust can be broken. But compassion, once shown, leaves a mark no crisis can erase. The true measure of a nation is not how it performs on calm days, but how it treats its people on the worst night imaginable. What happens next will define more than policy. It will define who we choose to be when everything else falls away.